Man, I just love a good romance. I've talked about a few of them on this channel. Eren and Mikasa were the first couple I talked about here, and I love them dearly. They have an extra special place for me as that video is the first to do well after my initial copyright strike, and I spent so much time arguing for them on Reddit. There's Gojo and Gita, which also has an extremely special place for me as it's such an important topic with my friends. And then there's some other pairs I haven't gotten videos yet that I hope one day will, like Shin and Lena. Of course, the romance shows I've talked about in Love is War and Origairu. Love both of those deeply, and both do romance incredibly well. But if you were to ask me what romance just makes me feel downright happy, just that warm feeling, without a doubt I'd say Horimiya. Horimiya was actually my fourth anime I've ever watched. It was after Chainsaw Man, and I wanted a nice palate cleanser after such a chaotic and wild show. And I definitely chose the right show. Horimiya is a show you just simply cannot hate. If you hate the show, your state of misery is beyond repair. Like, I'm a pretty miserable dude, so if I can love this show, you definitely can. Everything about this show just screams joy and happiness. You have a smile on your face the entire time watching the show. And how does it do it, you may ask? Well, it's really because how beautifully simple it is. I don't think this video will be that long because, well, how simple the story is. There's not too much I need to talk about. But let's start with the idea of an extremely simple story like Horimiya, because some people view that as a negative. One of my best friends actually is one of them. She doesn't hate the show, but she doesn't view it as much of anything because how simple it is. Because really there's nothing going on. And well, I don't have too much of a counter argument for that complaint, because well, there really is pretty much nothing going on. Sure, I can just say it's a slice of life, that's how they are, but even for that, Horimiya is definitely on the simple side. If you don't like this archetype of story and you just need a driving conflict, you probably won't love Horimiya. I'm more so saying that this archetype of story can be really good. Sometimes we all just need a story where we can just chill out and feel all giddy. The romance slice of life is, I think, the best genre for that. Horimiya perfectly understands that and what it wants to be and never tries to overstep its bounds. It doesn't try to do a bunch of tricks for media talk, it doesn't try to have a gimmick, it just tells a heartwarming high school story. In my Origairu video, I mentioned cooking analogies for romances. There I described Horimiya as a grilled steak, and it really is. Grilled steaks are very simple. Cooking at high heat to the right temperature and letting the steak shine itself. There's usually not a marinade or a sauce. You get grilled steak because you want to have pure steak flavor with some smokiness from the grill. It's a classic because it's so reliable, and a story like Horimiya executes that idea perfectly. The story's premise is all about our two main characters, Hori and Miyamura, hence the show's name being, you know, Horimiya, because the names are combined. It's like a ship name, which you probably already knew, but I just wanted to mention it. If these two characters were unlikable in any way, this entire story falls apart and becomes a giant waste of time. Because again, Horimiya's grilled steak. Horimiya, with Hori Miyamura being bad, is like grilling a dollar cut of steak. No matter how good your grilling is, a dollar steak is a dollar steak. You really can't do much, but thankfully, Hori and Miyamura were my favorite romance pair to watch, as well as great characters individually. So let's start with them as great characters individually, as again, for any romance to succeed, you need the individual characters to be at the very least likable. Because if you don't even meet that bar, it's hard for us, the audience, to give any shits about them. Miyamura is first introduced to us as the classic high school loner boy. He doesn't have friends, people think he's weird, he isolates himself, the whole package. It is a classic trope that has been done a gazillion times. Because of that, this trope can get really annoying and redundant. Anything being shown over and over will eventually become less and less appealing. But with this trope specifically, the point is that the character is not very appealing at first. If the story doesn't put the right emphasis on the development of the character, then it's just a miserable watch. Ishigami's character was amazing in Love is War because first, he was hilarious.
I want to die, so I'm going home. Sure, but please don't die.
And second, we saw his development throughout the story. He went from this timid loser who was drowning in insecurity and self-pity to someone who was able to overcome his demons to progress forward. Love is War was able to make the unappealing bit a gag and put the right emphasis on his development. So how did Horimiya tackle this trope with Miyamura? They basically moved on from it immediately. What separates Miyamura from most of this trope is that he isn't some loser that's a social repellent. He's kinda just a quiet and timid guy. In his private life though, he's someone who seems pretty secure in himself. Usually the high school loser guy wouldn't have a bunch of piercings and tattoos. It's so far off the norm. But it's really refreshing to see a character like Miyamura, someone who's just a chill dude who tends to be alone. No absurdly complicated backstory and worldview, just a dude. So like the anti-Hachiman, and like I love Hachiman, but it's nice to have a change of pace. Also, Miyamura is the most likable character of all time. You genuinely can't hate the dude. The very first thing we see him do is help out Hori's little brother, and he had a crazy good fit too, man. Look at the dude, he's dripped out and all. Another reason why straying away from the traditional loser bully trope was a really good idea. Miyamura is an incredibly attractive dude. You could not convince me this guy really was a loner that no one wanted to be with. He was hiding himself from everyone else due to norms and a lack of self-confidence. And that's really the central idea with him. He's an amazing, almost perfect dude, but he has raging self-confidence issues. You might be thinking though, if he is so perfect, doesn't that make him kind of a bad character? Because in a story like this, you do want the characters to be as relatable as possible. But that's the thing, he still is incredibly relatable, because he doesn't do otherworldly feats. He doesn't have some exceptional trait. He isn't a super genius nor a super athlete. How he acts and what he does is all in the bounds of what the average person like you and me can all do. He's awkward and at times incredibly clueless and naive, yet he tries his best to be the most helpful person he can be, then of course the best friend he can be, and at last the best boyfriend he can be. Despite his doubts in himself, he still tries, and that's something we can relate and look up to him for. The story's main message with Miyamura is that sometimes we need other people to open our eyes for us, much like many other romances, but again much simpler here. We're not in psychology class in Origairu, or jumping through a million hoops in Love is War. He just meets the right people and gets on the right path. So logically, let's talk about the main right person he meets, Hori. Like Miyamura, Hori is a perfect character for this show. She's initially depicted as a popular girl, so again a classic loser gets with a popular girl in a high school plot, a trope as old as time, but as before established, there is very little emphasis on this trope, because Miyamura doesn't act like your typical loser guy, and Hori doesn't act like your typical popular girl. Hori isn't like mean or condescending in the 2000s popular girl sense. She's just someone with a lot of friends, which is more aligned with the modern day popular person in high school. Importantly, her friends are also just pretty likable characters. I'll talk about the side characters a bit later, but they're pretty great. The story doesn't need them to do much, and I think they do more than they have to in a good way. But I'll go over them later. We're talking about Hori right now. She was the one who opened Miyamura's eyes to the world that he hid himself from. She was the one to do that because of how caring she is. We see her taking care of her brother pretty much all by herself in the beginning, showing that she is just a very caring person. As we progress in the story, she still remains this caring friend and this at times very defensive and protective girlfriend, which is just great to watch. She doesn't really develop or change over the course of the show, but she really didn't have to. In my opinion, there was really no arc she had to go on, because, well, no character really goes on an arc per se in this show. The show just didn't need to go in that direction. The important part was that the characters remain likable and consistent, which Hori definitely did. Her dynamics with everyone she interacts with were really fun to watch, especially with her family. It was a great time whenever they were on screen. But of course, the dynamic she shines the most in is with Miyamura, which will make sense. This show is literally called Horimiya. So let's talk about my favorite thing to talk about in these videos: romance dynamics. This romance thrives off a few main things. One is the pacing. Horimiya is 13 episodes long. Well, I guess there's more if you count pieces, but for the sake of this, I'm not. 13 episodes is not a lot of episodes. Now, of course, it is decently standard for animes, especially the romance ones, but it's still not a lot to work with. Traditionally, romance's climax near the end of the show with some type of confession arc, usually dragging on as long as possible to get that payoff. But Horimiya is a complete exception to this. It is remarkably fast-paced in terms of romance. They meet at episode 1, and by episode 4, they're dating? It only takes that little time. Isn't that great? And by episode 7, oh wow, they're moving super fast. The concern with moving this fast is of course that it's gonna feel rushed, but it really doesn't at all. They just have such good natural chemistry that from basically their first interaction they could have got together and I wouldn't complain too much. Of course that would have been way too fast and I definitely would have complained, so they do give us some time to see them interact. Horimiya's first real plot thing is that one of Hori's best friends liked her, and at first seeing Miyamura be with her kinda made him upset, so he told Miyamura to back off so he could confess. Miyamura, being the timid, not confident guy he was early on, willingly backed off. He was about to stop hanging out with someone who he really enjoyed being around just because someone told him to. Because he fully believed that he was not that big of a deal to Hori at the time, and more of a nuisance than anything, because of his social status and just his demeanor. And Hori had none of this bullshit.
If you ever stop coming to my house, who will be around to wake me up when I fall asleep watching movies?
Now, of course, there was a more heartfelt moment before she went berserk, which is very important. Hori doesn't give a shit about social status or that Miyamura is a supposed emo freak, because she loves being around him. She loves eating with him, watching movies with him, how he takes care of her brother, and so on. She shut this down from Miyamura so quickly. establishing that she wants him to be with her, not caring what anyone else thinks about it. And Miyamura was a person who was controlled by what other people thought at this point, so this shocked him, but importantly it made him rethink what he's been thinking all this time. Now maybe he's more than the labels he's been given, and what if I said all this happened in just episode 1. In the very first episode, they introduce our characters, make them meet, give them fun interactions, and give them this beautiful moment. That's fucking crazy, and for so many shows this would be too much. It would be way too much to cram into one episode, much less the first one, but Horimiya was able to do it because of how remarkably simple the story is. They don't have to introduce some unorthodox premise or club or whatever. These characters are just very common high school archetypes. This entire thing could very well happen in real life. But the story doesn't have to ease in concepts to the audience because the audience is so familiar with the concepts of the show. And because of that, they can move so fast, almost unrealistically fast, because the audience won't be scrambling to keep up. It's so easy to follow because of how simple it is. So of course, given this fast pace, we don't have to wait long for a confession.
Also, I'm in love with you, Hori. Have been for a while.
And it was so casual. There was no theatrics at all, he just said it. Even better is that he said it while he was taking care of her as she was sick, which makes the moment even more heartwarming. There's not much more to say, I just love these two and this moment was perfect for them. Since the confession is so early on, the majority of the show is actually them being together, which is such a nice change of pace from the norm. We actually get to see our couple be a couple, which brings us to the second thing this romance thrives off of, just straight up wholesomeness. I don't think it's possible to watch a Horimiya interaction without a giant smile on your face. These two are just so adorable, whether it be Hori forcing me to watch horror movies, Miyamura being unintentionally the smoothest man alive, or them just being dumbasses. It's so heartwarming. I also love this like flash time-esque thing they have in this show, where the setting changes and they have these colored silhouettes. It makes these moments seem so special despite their seemingly mundaneness, which is sort of the whole point of the show, showing us these cute little everyday moments and why that's so special. So a thumbs up to whoever thought of the flash time thing. And again, this show doesn't shy away from being corny and cheesy. It fully leans into the romance. They kiss, they're always with each other, hell, they fuck. They show off this couple so much and it's amazing. The third thing this romance really thrives off of, and it kinda is the same thing as wholesomeness, but it's how relatable it feels. What I mean by that is that it has a sense of realism to it. Now of course I don't mean that I personally relate to Miyamura's experience here. I mean I make anime video essays. I think most of you made the assumption that I don't have a Hori, which would be correct. But still, watching this show, you get a feeling of relatability. All these characters being dumbasses, being cute, just doing stuff together, it's immersive in a way. And again, it's because how simple the show is. I loved Love is War, but after a bit it stopped being that relatable because it leaned into the wacky and absurd antics of the rom-com genre. And it was great like that, but Horimiya is just a uniquely immersive and nice experience. My favorite little moment was that orange peel thing. Now this was technically in the pizza season, but it definitely still counts. It, on paper, is a very corny and odd moment. Miyamura just feeding Hori oranges when she was trying not to eat them. It's such a stupid little moment, but it's just so cute. You get Miyamura being this perfect dude trying to do cute things for his girlfriend, and Hori denying it and eventually giving in because Miyamura has otherworldly amounts of charm. It's just so good, and for those in relationships, you can surely relate to fun little moments like this, and for those without one, moments like this are surely stuff you've thought about on a consistent basis. Also, this shows a really funny gag of Hori having terrible misunderstandings with stuff that happens with Miyamura. In all fairness, she had every reason to misunderstand because usually it's some ridiculous shit that sounds really scandalous on paper. But it's great because we the audience know it's not something worth worrying about and it'll get resolved pretty quickly and finally. Because this relationship is just so good, and I don't think there's two moments that sum this up better than the last two episodes of the show. Let's start with...
Will you marry me, Kyoko Hori?
Now, for most shows, this be a little sloppy and not the best direction. I'm looking at you, Toradora. But as I said so many times in this video, it works for Horimiya because they gave us so many romantic moments between Miyamura and Hori and showed us just how much they meant to each other. So this feels natural. Now, it's still fast, but I wouldn't say rushed. I want to see the wedding scene. But unfortunately, I think the story is long done and I don't think we're gonna see that. And then we have the very last scene in this show, which is the best scene in this show, and honestly one of the best scenes from anything I've seen.
Hurry up! Miyamura!
It's just a perfect culmination of everything. A moment where Miyamura could see really how far he's come because of Hori. From someone who was so alone and timid with not much to look forward to graduating high school following a guiding light of love. Hori was able to unlock so much of Miyamura and let him see the beauties of life in the world. This right here is the dream, to have someone so precious that loves you so much and vice versa. And this scene captures that dream perfectly. Now before I end the video, I thought I'd briefly mention how surprisingly good these side characters in the show are. The thing is, they're kind of forgettable. Like, I honestly don't remember their names, so I'm gonna call them by their hair color because that's funnier than me looking it up. But I remember their stories. Remember the guy who liked Hori in the beginning? Well, the purple hair dude became an amazing friend for Miyamura who had a very good side story of him actually liking another person and really debating whether to go forward with it or not. In the end, he saw that he loved what they were now and is perfectly satisfied with how things were, which is a pretty valuable lesson for many and not something you see a lot of in stories. We have the red and pink hair couple who were really adorable with each other and were amazing for each other. Honestly, in another show, I wouldn't mind a whole arc dedicated to them. And just as a group, it was great to see Miyamura build such great friendships. Hori not only gave him an amazing relationship and love, but a supportive and caring friend group that he never had before, which should not go understated. But the best group of side characters were of course Hori's family. It was so great to see them basically just adopt Miyamura, how they all wanted him around and loved spending time with him. It just makes it even more heartwarming and shows us Hori and Miyamura were really just made for each other. Now these side characters again are relatively simple and are not asked to do much in the story. Just be relatable and likable. But that's all this show needs them to be, because it was not trying to jump through a million hoops and do backflips story-wise. It's a nice simple story that sends a beautiful message about the importance of companionship and the indescribable joy that is a good relationship. While I rate stories like Love is War and Origairu higher, Horimiya is a story that I always find myself looking back to, because sometimes a nice and simple story is what we need, and Horimiya is one of, if not the best in that genre.